Okay, Mayor, you can start in 3, 2, 1.
All right, we'll call this City Council regular meeting agenda to order for July 25th, 2022 at 6:47 p.m. Apologize for being a little bit late. We did have a previous meeting that went over, but good discussion nonetheless. So with that, we'll move forward in our agenda. I'll lead us in an invocation, followed by, would you do our pledges? There you go. So if you would, stand with me and join in. Heavenly Father, we just want to come to you tonight and just stop and take just a few moments to ask you to join us and be a part of our deliberations tonight. Father, just go before us, give us the wisdom and the questions and the right attitude in which to conduct the business of our city, for the residents of our city, for the citizens here in Pearland. Father, we just want to always stop and take a moment to ask you to protect our first responders as we see the calls for our police and our fire and EMS and even our first responders in our public works as they get called out in all hours of the night right now for water breaks and those types of things. And we just ask that you protect them, give them guidance, and give them an extra of your grace and mercy tonight. Father, again, be with our citizens, be with our community. Father, just have your hand upon this council tonight. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in pledge to the United States flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now to our state flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, thank you for that. Next item under our agenda is roll call and certification of quorum. Madam Secretary, I'll certify that we do have a quorum present and that all members are present. So I want to thank our members for that. Next up, citizens' comments. We do have a couple of citizens that signed up to speak, but they signed up to speak for specific agenda items. So we will call your name when we get to that particular item. As I understand, no general comments tonight. With that, we'll move to public hearing number 1. Mr. Hardy, if you want to get ready, I'll put it on the table and take it away. So a public hearing regarding the city's 16th Community Development Block Grant or CDBG program. FY 2023 Annual Action Plan is part of FY 23 through 2027 CDBG 5-year Consolidated Plan. With that, staff and Mr. Hardy, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight we will conduct the actual public hearing section of our requirements to complete the Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan requirements associated with our Community Development Block Grant Program. We are, as we discussed on July the 11th, in that place where we are providing specifics to the community about the program and have solicited data and other supportive information from various sources to help us put the prioritization elements of that plan in place. And we'll present some of that information tonight. We'll try to move quickly. We do have a lot of information to cover, but some of it I'll get into more detail about. Others I'll simply gloss over. But at the end of the day, the public will be able to make comments and council will be able to do the same and ask questions and take the staff report information further if necessary. So to start off, I'll cover some things that we generally cover by requirement. We have to provide information about the Community Development Block Grant Program. It is an entitlement program offered to cities over the 50,000 population. Counties that are over 200,000 also participate in this program. And basically what those two population thresholds offer is an opportunity for us to receive these funds directly from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The program is a fairly flexible spending program. We do have to abide by regulations in the HUD guidance under 24 CFR 570 and other similar regulations. as well as a uniform federal guidance that comes out of 2 CFR Part 200. But some of the work we do covers some of these spending opportunities, some of these categories that we're allowed to do work in, but we base our prioritizations on things that we get from the community in the form of data and survey responses. Again, the purpose of the program is to meet one of three HUD National Objectives, the first being to remove slum and blight. We're also able to use these funds to meet local urgent needs. So if there's a natural disaster, such as a hurricane or some other national emergency or catastrophic event, we're able to use these funds for those purposes as well. Primarily, and based on the history of our program here, we focus on the effort to serve low to moderate income people in the community. And so this means people who are below 80% of the metropolitan statistical area income level, or areas that are 51% or more low to moderate income. Pearland, as I've mentioned in the past and can answer questions and go into more detail, we're what's considered an exception criteria entitlement jurisdiction because our census tracts don't have an upper quartile population that's 51% or more low to moderate income. We qualify for a lower rate there. So we're at 45% low to moderate income for our area benefit projects. And I'll go into more detail about what that area benefit is defined as. So to give you an idea of what the income limitations for this year look like, where HUD income limits are concerned, a 4-member household in Pearland can make as much as $85,600 and still qualify as a beneficiary for this program. And that goes down in different steps as you get into the extremely low and very low income levels with the program. And this is based on the area's 107,000 median family income for Brazoria County. As I mentioned, there's an area benefit category that allows us to complete projects that benefit larger areas, more than one residence, for example. And based on the exception criteria that Pearland qualifies under, those are areas that are 45% or more low to moderate income. So with the current state of the economy and the Census Bureau's analysis of our population and income and other demography, we've got what I would like to consider a safe space, if you will, in the community that's comprised of about 4 or 5 block groups. And those are the areas that are south of the creek, west of 35, north of FM 518 Broadway, and generally speaking east of Cullen. That area kind of fluctuates, but what you can see now on the map is the area that we would generally be able to complete an area benefit project, such as a drainage project, a water line or sewer project, or something that benefits, again, more than one household. How HUD gives us this money is based on a formula that is actually available to 2 different types of communities. The formula that we fall into is the one that really focuses more on overcrowded housing as opposed to the pre-1940s housing unit analysis that Formula B takes into consideration. But basically, it's something that allows us to receive these funds based on population and the poverty in the community. Just to kind of once again cover the overview as to how the Consolidated Plan process works in relationship to the annualization of our priorities. We have this overarching Consolidated Plan that will encompass 5 years of prioritization. And each year we submit an individual action plan to HUD in ways that allows us to determine how we meet those project priorities that the 5-year Consolidated Plan has laid out for us. When we start the process of the Consolidated Plan, we get an allocation notice from HUD that tells us what we'll get in that first year. And every year thereafter, we'll get a notice prior to our planning process that allows us to determine how much we have to work with. So for FY23, we're looking at $478,854, which is just a little bit above the $462 that we received and that we're working with in the current year. So again, the planning process that we embark on involves our taking a look at the various income, economic conditions, housing conditions, the matrix of social services activities, and resources that are available to the community. We look at our demography so that we can plan out as to who we're serving in the community and the demography that our community is made up of. And we get this information through various sources. U.S. Census Bureau is probably one of the primary sources. We use this information to develop our plan, but we also look at some other data sources that we'll get into. These are some things that we all are familiar with: the racial demography of the community, gender and age, some of the housing characteristics that we look to make sure we're paying attention to when we plan. Those are important. This is from a dashboard that community development has put together. Kind of gives us an idea of the size and scope of housing in our community. One of the interesting bits of data that we often pay attention to when planning involves the cost burden associated with housing in our community. The comprehensive housing affordability strategy data is what we generally use to get that information. It tells us what percentage of households in the community are dealing with house cost burdens. So this is the data that shows that someone or a household is spending 30% or 50% of their income on housing costs, which are considerably high. So in Pearland, 8,200 cost burden housing units are in place right now, which equates to about 23,000 of our citizens. And 62% of those are between that 30% and 50% cost burden range, but 38.7% are 50% or more. Overall, the cost burden population is made up of about 60% owners and 40% renters. And there are probably about 300 or so that we don't have cost burden information about. Some other information that we use in the planning process involve our median values and household costs as far as the value of a home, how much people spend on mortgage, rents, and things of that nature. So another thing we do is we go directly to the community as best as we can to poll and survey residents about what they think the priority should be for spending this money. So every 5 years we put together a really brief survey that allows folks to participate by giving us their preferences and thoughts about the program. We've got a 36-question survey out that covers, gives us the demographic information of those surveyed, as well as their thoughts about non-housing, housing, facilities and infrastructure activities that we could conduct with these dollars. And we've done that in English and in Spanish. And the internet website addresses are on this slide that show where that survey can be accessed. But for the sake of those in the audience, if you're interested in taking this survey, we've got 2 flyers outside where your citizen comment forms are, that you can take that with you and go home and participate in the survey if you'd like. I very much encourage that. Some of the results that we've gotten to date, the survey is still open until August the 8th, so we've got some time to continue to get responses. I will say in the last 3 con plan processes, we've had a very informal surveying process that have resulted in very, very low participation. And even though these numbers don't seem like they're a lot, we've probably got about 150 responses. They're much higher than we've received in the past. And working with communications, we're going to continue to get that out further so we can even get more responses. But this slide kind of gives you an idea of some of the survey demography we're working with. Again, we're focusing on people that reside in the city limits. That's who we want our responses from. And it seems like we're getting that. We're also able to kind of get an idea of what sections of town that we're getting these responses from. Kind of helps us understand the complexities of the issues that are facing different segments of the community, so we can respond to those in coordination with our target area work and the size of the household that is participating in the response. So now I'll get into the details that we have as far as results by the different areas. I thought I'd start out with social services. I think some of the things that we do are definitely helped by the local nonprofit agencies in town. Although we don't have a robust population of those agencies, we do have agencies that do good work and fulfill the mission. And these results kind of show that we're heading in the right direction as far as what we've been doing in the past and what the benefit of continuing in that direction is. So mental health services continue to show a moderate to high need in the community based on these survey results. We're investing in services for seniors. Those numbers look good as well. Emergency assistance to those in need that rent housing, as well as child care for working families. All of those responses and the different survey questions in that regard show that we're probably going to need to continue doing those kinds of things. The survey also gave us an opportunity to get information and feedback on what we are doing or should be doing where neighborhood facilities and parks and recreation facilities are concerned. Both of those, again, come back with notable support for those types of activities. On the housing and community development side, we're getting a good impression of the need to continue minor home repair. There is some support for substantial rehabilitation, $10,000 and over. We generally end up where our current housing rehab program is concerned, seeing cost along those lines. So even though the survey responses aren't that high in support of that, I think I would recommend that we continue to do that kind of work. One thing that's not surprising, considering the climate and the disaster propensity we have in our community, is weatherization seems to be something that's supported in a significant way. So I think we need to look at those numbers and watch the survey results as we get through the planning process to determine if we enhance our housing rehab program to include weatherization as well. And we always make sure that in any of the program activities involving housing rehab, that we're looking out for elderly and disabled and making sure that the activities that can improve ADA accessibility are available when necessary. Some of the things where housing and community development are concerned that show we should avoid certain activities, including construction of new affordable rental units, permanent supportive housing for the homeless, transitional housing for homeless, and public housing units. This ties directly into our demographic, economic, housing conditions. Our economy does not warrant, and nor do our homeless conditions warrant that we invest in that regard. So I think the data is supportive of us being a community that does not have to invest in those kinds of things, as would be in a larger city like Houston and some other areas. Some areas that are obviously of concern because, again, our propensity for facing disaster, specifically where flooding is concerned. Not surprising that the flood drainage improvement, water, sewer, street improvements, and sidewalk uses for these funds would be widely supported. I have a question mark by this only because the dollar amount we receive from HUD really doesn't support these kinds of things. But we do have the potential to attract and use other dollars, and we should take this information into consideration and make sure we're programming efforts to support these kinds of things in conjunction with our community development block grant program. Sidewalks is something that we started out doing a lot of when we first got this money. So you see a lot of that activity in our first consolidated plan. And I think we did a good job of covering the landscape of opportunities there in the target area. But there may be some spot basis work that we can cover in future years that we need to make sure we're allocating dollars for in those neighborhoods. So generally, to wrap that up, I think these are the 12 or so areas that we would focus on prioritizing. Again, most of these have a moderate to high level of support when you look at the survey results, and also promote continuity of what we've been investing in the past. It's been very successful and has helped the community in regards to its unmet needs. Again, I've bolded the sidewalk and flood drainage improvement items because they're important. I just don't think that the CDBG program can accommodate the costs associated with a lot of those impacts, but we'll keep our eyes out from opportunities to create a nexus to those activities. So one of the things the con plan work requires that we do is to figure out how we're going to spend the first allocation of the HUD funds associated with those plan years. And we've come up with a basic recommendation for doing so. Based on the results, we believe that nonprofit facility improvements are a high priority. We have a separately funded American Rescue Plan Act allocation that's going out to a local mental health services facility. We can use those dollars to assist that service, that agency, with acquiring the land and acquiring the structure they're currently operating out of, but that structure needs some significant improvements. So our recommendation would be to use CDBG funds to make the improvements and the ARPA money to allow them to do the land acquisition for that program. And we would continue to support their mental health services activities as well. Rental assistance is still somewhat of a concern. We've given the Pearland Neighborhood Center a small amount of money to operate within the city, and I think that should continue. And we're also wanting to continue child care services. I think with the growing element of providing working families with the opportunity to access child care services, we need to make sure there are some local public funds available to support that effort. We want to continue the housing rehab program. We've got money carrying over from prior years that would allow us to focus the current allocation or the planned allocation on the administrative costs associated with the personnel, but we've got the money already in play for actually making repairs to homes. And the last thing I'll say is we generally budget the maximum amount of oversight and administration funding available, which would be 20% of our allocation. But this year we found that there were some other priorities that we need to make sure get as much coverage as possible. So the recommendation is to reduce that from 20% to 14.3% and lessen the program admin budget for that year. So I think this pretty much covers it. I'm glad I got through that without 30 minutes of discussion, but hopefully I've gotten all the information out. The last thing I want to cover is the schedule. Again, it's a tight schedule. We did get our allocation notice from HUD late, which kind of put us behind the 8 ball as far as planning. But I think with the current plan, we'll be able to accomplish what we require and get the plan adopted at the regular meeting of August the 8th. This public hearing will complete the portion of presentations we need to consider as far as the public and council are concerned, but we'll continue to let the comment period prevail until we get to the place where we're ready to submit the plan. And the plan is due to HUD August 16th. And
all right,
with that said, that ends my staff presentation. I pass back to Balance.
All right, good presentation, Joel, as always. So we'll move forward after the staff's presentation to public comment. We do have one speaker registration to address the public hearing number 1. Mayor Pro Tem, would you present that, please?
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Kevin Murphy, you would go to the podium, give us your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I'm here in my capacity as the board president for the Adult Education Center. We're requesting being considered for the CDBG funds to repair our facility. The Adult Education Center, formerly known as the Adult Reading Center, is in the heart of Pearland. We provide adult education services such as ESL, GED, citizenship, small business, entrepreneurship, and phlebotomy, along with many support services such as financial, credit literacy, and rapid reskilling classes. Our program has taken a strong emphasis in the workforce, career readiness, and employment skills while providing career and employment pathways. We also partner with many community partners within Pearland and the surrounding areas to ensure that our students have quality instruction and programming. This year alone, we served over 400 students, which is no small feat. We've had to service our students within a building that is falling apart. The building is in desperate need of a new roof. The parking lot floods when it rains. The annex building has mold and cannot be utilized. This building is outdated and makes digital literacy extremely difficult to achieve. This building does not represent who we are as an agency and does not represent the community we serve. We want to continue to do great work in the community, but we either need a new building or to renovate the current building. No one should have to walk through puddles of water when it rains or worry about losing power or the AC constantly going out, having to be repaired in 100+ degree weather. Our students and staff deserve better than that. So we're asking you to consider helping the Adult Education Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. We'll just open it up to the public who would like to make a public comment. We'll just make 2 calls to the public and go to the podium, give your name and address, and 3 minutes. Second and final request for those who would like to address council in this public hearing. All right, with that, we'll move to questions and comments and concerns from City Council. Anybody have anything? Member Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. Joel, as usual, great content. Don't know how you keep up with all this stuff. It's really mind-bending most of the time. I had a question, just more of a process question. If we do an improvement on a housing rehab project, what safeguards maybe are in place that if we were to give someone funds, do a repair on their home, for them not to turn around and, take those improvements, try to sell the home, something like that? What do we do to prevent that?
So just a little bit of background. We did kind of relocate that program into community development. I think Fire did a good job of making the, initial development of that program, and it's more fitting for community development to do that work. Martin's staff is the personnel identified for overseeing that. And one of the things that has come out of the change has been the decision to put a lien on all housing rehab program participants. So we put a lien on those homes for 5 years.
Fantastic.
And that's based on the useful life of the repairs that we make.
Got it. Thank you for that. And the second was, I saw that there was a need there for mental health. I think across all of Brazoria County, there seems to be a significant, vacuum of service available here. But I know we've got the Counseling Connections for Change. We've also got the SIVA Clinic. Has there been any chat about any synergy between those, I guess, at all, to maybe expand access? Or is, from my understanding, CCC is really the only group that we're working with for the mental health portion?
Yeah, I think there's a separate call there. I mean, the mental health counseling activities, CCFC do. SIVA focuses more on general community health, so more physician-oriented health, if you will. We have given them some funds, so the two are separate. It's a priority in the 5-year plan, and we will probably be able to allocate funds in that direction in the future again. But for now, the recommendation would be to make sure that there's a placeholder, if you will, for that opportunity in the 5-year plan. But this coming year, focus on the list of entities that we've identified.
Okay, and final question, Mayor, was I saw parks and facilities were there as well. Can you kind of speak? I know we've got to show that there's a direct benefit to maybe a certain segment of the population. How do we quantify that, and maybe what types of projects would fall under that scope?
So a parks project could be a park in a specific area of town, a neighborhood park, for example, that serves a low to moderate income area, and it would easily fall within that area benefit criteria. It's kind of difficult to envision a parks project with an individual LMI beneficiary approach. It's really kind of difficult to do that.
Okay. And then not a question, but a comment. I'm fully supportive of Adult Education Center. I think they do fantastic work, have done fantastic work for a long time here in our community. So trying to get them in better shape, I think, would be of great benefit.
So we do have a prior year allocation available for them to act on that involves, I believe, $25,000 for some small repairs. And when we initiated the process in April of announcing the grant opportunity for the nonprofit facility grant through ARPA funds, we made a dedicated effort to reach out to the Adult Education Center to make sure they had an opportunity to apply. We did not receive an application.
My understanding was they went through a leadership change there. So is that window closed, or is that something that they've had a chance to transition? They might be able to.
That window for that specific opportunity is closed. We do have some additional social services funds that we could recalibrate to more of a facility-oriented benefit, but that would be a management recommendation and council action on that type of change to the plan.
Okay.
But it's not something that we could,
Just do on the fly.
we wouldn't want to do it on the fly, but it's not out of the question.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Good, good. Member Cade?
Yes. Hi, Joel. Thank you so much for your presentation. If you could go to the slide where you had areas highlighted. Yes, thank you. You said one of the 3 HUD objectives is to remove or reduce slum and blight. Is that, do these tracks fulfill that obligation?
Not necessarily, because the slum and blight project, as far as eligibility, would be one that's got a number of blighted properties adjacent to one another on the same street or in the same area. You would have to have a voluminous amount of blight to just go in and do spot basis work in these areas, and I don't think we have any area that's like that. But if we do come across situations where you've got 3 or 4, 4 or 5 homes on the same stretch that need to be torn down and are totally dilapidated, we can use these funds for that purpose. There's a formula that goes into determining that as well, and it's not anything, super sophisticated, but we'd use that to determine if we could eligibly use CDBG to tear those structures down.
Okay, thank you. And I was going to say I would be in support of Mr. Murphy's project as well, just to say that. Thank you.
Staff will reach out and figure out what we can consider there.
Thank you.
Good deal. Any other questions, comments? Member Camcar? Turn your mic on. There you go.
I'm so excited. I haven't been here in a while. Josh, can we pull up page 11 of the memo? There's a graphic. It has the IDS fund balances.
If you give me a second, council member,
Yeah,
I can
you got it.
pull that up.
Page 11, Joel. There you go. You went too fast. Page 11. Or no, you don't have an 11. You had all the pictures. It's a little bit right there. Just a little bit down. There you go. So can you just topically go over what is the IDS grant balance? Then you have it broken out by these categories, and there's a big chunk that is from previous years.
Yes, so we've got the most recent allocations of HUD money that has come to the city to the extent that we have unspent money. So going back to 2016 is the furthest year out that we have unspent HUD funds and unallocated HUD funds. So that's that $130 you see there. And over the course of the years, there are dollar amounts that generally become unprogrammed because we may not use all of the program administration funds that we've budgeted for. So if we budget for $80,000 and only spend $30,000 or $40,000, the HUD rule is that the remaining balance can be carried over for future use, but it can only be spent in an infrastructure or facility improvement. You can't spend it on program admin again, and you can't dump it into social services work. It's got to be something.
So it has to build something.
Correct.
Okay. So is the 653 stranded dollars of the 2.1, or are those still?
No, those are all
working their way through
programmed.
this?
The only thing that's available for reprogramming is the 268,015 at the far right.
Okay. So we have to build something with that then.
Correct.
You know what my favorite word is? It's drainage. You know. So I know that it doesn't do very many. 268 needs about like 4 more friends that size, but I mean, you know my favorite word. So, okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Could widen a ditch in front of one home.
It was a big ditch, though. It needs to be a big ditch. No, I know. All right. No, I appreciate it, and I'm really glad to see you guys are doing great work, and I look forward to supporting this.
Well, as we get to the point where we program those dollars, council will see what the recommendation is.
Great. Thank you, Joel.
Any other questions, comments? I'll just echo the same. Whether it's in this year or over several years, anything we can do to help the adult education center, that would be good. Rehabbing that building, even if it takes a few years to get through it, I think that'd be good. So hopefully we can see something when it comes back to us. So with that, we're going to close this public hearing and move to new business item number 1. With that, Member Koza, would you place new business item number 1 on the table, please?
Consideration and possible action, resolution number R2022-171. So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Although this is not directly related to the CDBG regular program, which we just had the public hearing on, it is topical to the idea of grants and pass-throughs. And this particular motion is asking Council to formalize a acceptance of just over almost $15 million in funds through HGAC. And this is a regional distribution program that GLO has a hand in as well, the Texas Government Land Office. And so these particular monies will be used for future mitigation efforts. So we wanted to get this on the record and then start to program that and come back to you for work on that coming up. Nothing else to add, unless Joel has to emphasize anything else on that.
Just that this is just a placeholder for those dollars, so no action as far as the specific type of use or anything like that. I think HGAC wants to make sure that the method of distribution is solid and that the entities that are being awarded are willing to and able to accept the funds at this time, and they don't have to go back and do any redistribution unless an entity says we can't take the money or don't want it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Joel, this would be the minimum. That method of distribution is still being finalized, so these are going simultaneously, but this would be the minimum that we'd be looking to get?
Under the current method of distribution, I believe so, yes. And we have our good friend Melissa Washington from the GLO front and center to answer any sophisticated questions, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think
Tough questions.
This is the bottom line.
There you go. And just, I want to add a couple of things. As a member of the Water Resources Committee through HGAC, this method of distribution and these dollars have been flowing through that committee. You may have heard in the news about direct allocations from this program to Harris County. Does the city of Houston and cities in Harris County participate or not, and those types of things. And those were questions that we as an internal committee, Water Resources Committee, wrestled with and grappled with. And so ultimately we came down as a committee on the side of, since Harris County is getting a direct allocation from the GLO and HUD on this, it's $750 million, then we would take out the cities in Harris County and allow Harris County to do its own method of distribution within Harris County. We have a portion of our city that's within Harris County, okay? And had we, there was an opportunity to get, somewhere around $1 million within the Harris County portion. Had we included Harris County and the city of Houston and all the different cities within Harris County into the method of distribution, this 14 million would have shrunk to somewhere between 5 and 6 million for our city. So we decided, and most of the cities and most of the representatives on the committee decided to let Harris County do their own method of distribution. So again, this is a minimum amount. We may still get some dollars from Harris County in that portion to it. So we felt like it was a bigger chunk to our city, a bigger help to our city. In order to do that. This has gone quite some time. Melissa can speak to the years. This is post-Harvey mitigation grant funding. I think the total amount is $488 million in this particular block grant program. So the time has come to finally get these dollars on the street and into projects and get some things built. So hopefully, and this, quite frankly, we could sign and do and move forward accepting the funds. But the letter we received from HGAC basically stated we would really prefer your council vote on this to authorize the signature, specifically if for some reason there's additional dollars that come available later. We'll have that already and can be considered for additional dollars. With that, I'll turn it over to questions, comments from council. Anything? All right, good deal. Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Koza,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone,
Aye.
Councilmember Kemkar,
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Cade,
Aye.
Councilmember Barry,
Aye.
Councilmember Owens.
Owens.
Aye.
There you go.
The motion passes.
All right, with that, we will move to the consent agenda. I have had items C as in Charlie, E as in Echo, I as in Igloo, and L as in Lima. Request to be pulled.
Sorry, Mayor, Charlie, Echo, India, Lima?
Yeah, that's it. That's correct. So we will move those to the appropriate spot. All right, with that, Member Kamkar, would you present consent agenda items A through L with the exceptions of C, E, I, and L?
Yes, Mayor. For consideration and possible action, consent agenda with the exceptions of C, E, I, and L. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Councilmember Kemkar,
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Cade,
Aye.
Councilmember Barry,
Aye.
Councilmember Owens,
Aye.
Councilmember Koza,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone.
Aye.
The motion passes.
All right, moving to new business continued. New business item number 2. Mayor Pro Tem, would you present number 2, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action resolution R 2022-155. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the time of the year where we consider the actual capital improvement program for the upcoming 2023 through 2027 time period. And we have Eric Roche will give a presentation focusing primarily on the process and the financing pieces. We also have our newly minted projects manager, Jameson Appel, that's available along with Robert and Trent, of course, to talk about any project specifics. But tonight is the culmination of many steps leading up to tonight with other briefings and updates to give you this document that we have for consideration. So, Eric.
Good evening, everybody. Last time I was here was March 21st. We presented a draft of this CIP. We received council feedback. We received feedback throughout the year, but this was the first time you had seen the plan was March 21st. We've since incorporated that feedback, and what you're seeing tonight is the revised plan. We're going to talk about this CIP in 3 sections. The first section is property tax-backed issuances. The second section is your enterprise revenue-backed issuances, so water and sewer projects. And the third section will have a surface water plant update. The CIP is what we call an output of our planning structure. So we have many plans that guide the city. We have our strategic priorities, a community survey, a comp plan, a number of infrastructure plans. And all of these really start to come into fruition with the CIP, which is where money is getting planned out and allocated and blessed by the council and therefore the public to be spent and get these projects constructed. So it's an extremely important document. This meeting is really a culmination of several previous meetings. We have pre-award memos, we have project update memos, bi-monthly milestone reports, as well as the quarterly CIP update series. Today, we are discussing what we are building and what it takes to fund, operate, and maintain those projects. A quick overview, as you can see on the screen, is we've had a number of CIP update series. Most recently, on June 20th, we had the Drainage and Transportation CIP update. All of these materials are available online. We also have some upcoming CIP items, including tonight's adoption by resolution, a Parks and Facilities CIP update, and a Water and Wastewater CIP update. The purpose of these updates is to inform council on really the city's long-term vision, project status, upcoming needs, and the operation and maintenance, or O&M, impacts. These are where those staff costs come into play when you build something like a water plant that needs staff to operate it. We try and provide a holistic view of the CIP, so that includes planning, design, construction, operation, and long-term maintenance of the city's infrastructure. And in the lower right, you can see sort of a cost curve. This one's for streets, I believe. But essentially, the idea is that when you build something, it's a lot cheaper to maintain that now before it degrades into a seriously low quality condition. So with a street, it might cost a few dollars now to repair it, or it might cost a whole lot of dollars in the future. And this is really a guiding principle of the city's infrastructure plan in general. A quick overview. So we met back in March with the CIP workshop. Today we're discussing our adoption. I'm going to stress this a few times because CIP is one of those weird documents where any changes we make today are not going to take effect in the FY23 budget year, but they will take effect in the FY24 budget year. That's where you will see a difference in debt service requirements and therefore taxes, or an impact on utility rates, either increasing them or decreasing pressure on them. We will then, once this is adopted, move into the execution phase, where the budget that is adopted in August will fund the first year of the CIP. Then we will bring the intent to reimburse in October, and then projects will begin to be worked on as we prepare the debt issuance. And then in late spring, early summer, we will sell that debt. And the debt that we sell next summer, we will begin payments on in FY24. Hence why the projects that we discussed today, any changes, FY22 is already locked in, or sorry, FY23 is already locked in. Any changes we make today won't come into effect on the financial side of things until FY24. All right, so let's talk about our property-backed issuances. So affecting the financial situation are all of our current debt obligations for projects that have already been undertaken. When we undertake these projects, they can have a payback period between 5 and 25 years typically. Then we will do our debt sale, which we just completed about a month or two ago. And then we have the upcoming CIP, which will influence the debt that we will need to sell in the future. That's where the major council lever is in the CIP if you want to impact the financials. Just a little background that I'm required to give. We have to have we have to levy a debt service tax rate that is enough to generate enough revenue to pay our debt service obligations. That's a state law. This debt service is distinct from the operations or O&M portion of the rate. The debt service amount is already fixed. We already know what it's going to be for FY23, and it's going to be $42,677,000 and some change. So again, we will be affecting FY24 moving forward, not FY23. This is a chart of the debt to assessed value rate over time. You can see back in FY13, it was at 4.7%. It's decreased since then. That dark blue line includes the TERS valuation. The light blue line does not include the TERS valuation. A little background on the TERS, because it is very unique to the city of Pearland to have a TERS this successful and this size. It currently holds $3.1 billion in value. The city does not receive property tax based off the TERS. Instead, we receive an administrative charge. It amounts to roughly 64% of the property tax revenue. This money can be used for operations only. It cannot be used for debt service. In 2029, the TERS is scheduled to expire, and the full value of the TERS will be added to the city's tax roll. So in FY30, after the TERS is dissolved, you will see a significant drop in the debt component of the tax rate because you'll have all this new property value coming online. These are updated numbers reflecting the new CIP that you're seeing tonight that look at the amount of proceeds we would need to raise in future years. So you can see next year in FY23, we're looking at, for the city's CO and GO component, $42.6 million, and then in the TERS component, $9.3 million. And you can see the out years there as well. I should add that this table is without the future election bond package. So this is just the straight CIP without any future election approving additional issuances of bonds. The next table includes what we would issue if those bonds passed as they're being proposed today. This is a quick update. We like to come back to this because in FY19, we told residents that the potential rate they might see on the debt service side of things would be up to 48 cents. We've never come close to that. In FY20, it was 43 cents, and since then it's gone down to under 40 cents. We're at 39 cents currently. Our AV growth, we do not have that figure for FY23. We are asking the county for it daily at this point, and we know they're working hard to get it to us. We'll have it for the budget that you'll receive on August 5th. We are assuming 4.5% growth, although it looks like it'll be higher than that. We sure hope. And with that, we're going to get into the specific property tax-backed projects, so I will hand it over to our Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Continue on in the presentation with regards to our current program. We've broken our CIP down into 4 main priorities. Each of these priorities are specific. For example, these projects that are identified as priority 1 are projects that we tie to outside funding obligations such as TxDOT, HGAC, or other partnerships that we may have where we work together to get a project done. So these are our shares of that. So these are projects that we consider critical in ranking, meaning that we need to continue moving forward with them because of debt sales associated with those projects from other funding agencies. Our priority 2 projects, these are ones that we operate, we fund through the city backed debt. These projects are also within our 2019 bond program, and these are priority 2 projects. These projects are new or repair or replacement of critical infrastructure. Such projects, for example, are drainage projects associated with Wesley or Willowcrest, our traffic signal upgrades, taking a look at street reconstruction. Those items were associated with also the 2019 bond program. Our third priority are projects that have the potential to be postponed. These could be postponed with moderate impact, but please note that a couple of the projects in here are also still associated with the 2019 bond program that the voters voted on. And that would be the Bailey Road expansion project from Veterans to Maine, and also park equipment recapitalization program for fiscal year 23. Those 2 projects, of course, as I mentioned, were voter approved bonds. But like I said, these projects, some of these could be postponed with moderate impact. And then our last priority, priority number 4, is that these could be postponed with no major repercussions. And then moving forward, these would be some landscaping on Kingsley and Kirby. And then we had talked about having a 3rd fuel island located out at Reflection Bay to assist those vehicles that are stationed over on the far west side of town. With that, taking a look at each of those priorities, a total $52 million broken down by priorities 1, 2, 3, and 4 listed there for the fiscal year 23 debt issuances. Again, each of these priorities are identified as either tied to outside funding. These are projects that are new, repair, replacement of critical infrastructure, projects that could be postponed with moderate inconvenience, or those that could be postponed with no major repercussions. Again, each of these projects do also have a general fund operation and maintenance impact. Each one has its long-term maintenance that needs to be done and funded. For those identified in 23, the budget requirements are about $268,000. And then for fiscal year '24, as we continue moving forward with some of those projects, is that they're estimated at $537,000 for ongoing operations and maintenance as those projects continue to be able to get the longevity and life associated with that project. So at this time, return this back to Mr. Roche to complete this portion of the presentation. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to pause here and take any questions on any of the tax-backed projects, anything I said about the financing that I can help clarify.
All right, with that, council, questions, comments, concerns on this portion? Okay. You were contemplating, so I was waiting. This is on the tax, on this portion of the present. I think we're going to break it down into.
Yep, I've got a few more spots for questions as well, so this is not the last time for questions.
Yeah, but this, if you've got project questions that are not enterprise, this would be appropriate for that, so.
Thanks, Joe. What would I do without you? You help me out here. Fire Station 11, that's in this priority 3. Is that tax backed? Has somebody voted on that yet?
Councilman Camcar, that is currently set up under that as certificates of obligation. No one has voted on that one yet, nor Fire Station number 7.
Where was Fire Station 11 going to be located?
Fire Station 11 currently is planned to be located down off of County Road 100. Near the Massey Oaks subdivision would be the best relevance down there. As continued development enhances and continues there will need to be some response in a future date.
Potentially, yeah.
When is that scheduled right now? When do we have that programmed, Fire Station 11? Oh, the future.
It's
Like, is that in the 23 or the 24?
24 plus, so it could be any time after 24 if I read that correct.
Eric or Robert, can you go
Yes,
to the
it's-
project sheet, the detail?
It's scheduled, it looks like we have the staff scheduled to begin in FY26. And then, so look halfway through FY26 with the full staffing cost budgeted in FY27.
One of the, Councilman Camcar, to add to it, one of the items is that for next year is to be able to start acquiring land. So that's why you'll see some funding in there, is to be able to identify and potentially maybe purchase some land if we're unable to work with developers to provide that land for that fire station.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Barry?
So I think Fire Station number 8, isn't that going to be right there on Bailey by the natatorium?
That's 7.
7.
8's up by Shadow Creek Parkway.
Okay, sorry, 7 then. So
that's on land we already own, lets you pray now.
right. Yep. So that land's already owned, and just real quick, if you have that available, when's that planned to start? Because if it's going to start before then we could potentially have a short-term fix for that. Right?
Operation of fire station number 7 is scheduled for FY25.
Okay, so
Correct. Associated, Councilman Berry, with that is, that's a fire station that would be considered that we're doing a preliminary engineering report on right now to provide cost estimating, provide that so that you could do that as a potential facilities bond aspect.
thanks, Robert.
Member Cade?
Can you go back to the critical ranking 1 page? Thank you. The Shadow Creek Parkway landscaping, street lighting, and sidewalks is, how big of a section of Shadow Creek Parkway is that?
So that is funded by the TERS number 2 funding. So that will stay within the TERS area of Shadow Creek, and that'll be from Business Center Drive out to the park.
That's in design now, right?
That is in design. That
We've
is
already awarded design for that.
It's for the majority of the stretch of Shadow Creek Parkway.
Yeah.
pretty much all of it on it, but it has to be within the confines of the TERS 2 area.
Landscape, sidewalks, and street lighting already exists from Business Center to 288. I think it's the rest of it.
Okay. And then on critical ranking 2 page, the natatorium stuff, is that the recapitalization? What does that mean exactly, please?
So with regards to the natatorium, one of the projects we've been working with Ms. Capers and her department has been with regards to the pool, the bulkheads, let me make sure I get the right with the bulkheads, the plaster, and the heaters. Thank you, and the heaters associated with it. It's normal maintenance items that need to be done on a pool over a period of time.
Not really maintenance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Reinvestment in the capital for that. So.
Thank you, sir.
Real quick off that, is that I don't want to tell, but is that a joint funding with the school district, or is that all our money?
Per the existing agreement, the school district has a portion of that for large capital.
The answer is yes. Should be.
They still owe us money though, right?
No, we've gotten
No.
a check, so they're, I don't know if they're current, but I think they're current.
We're good?
Yeah.
Dude, that's great, Tony.
Can I get a memo on that?
Man, that's like a party. We got to throw a party for that one.
Yeah, get T-shirts.
Yay.
Not fair, by the way, and I think the school district is still in negotiation, or should be, with definition of maintenance in that agreement.
No.
That's not maintenance.
It's capital. So
That's right.
Is there a PER for Independence Park, the additional add-on phases to that? Is there a PER out there?
Yes, there is an older one out there, yes, that we did for phase 2 and phase 3.
How old is it?
3, maybe 4 years right now.
No, I think priority-wise, we got an area of the city that is going to be undeveloped. The fire station needs to come into place, but I think, that area, I would love to see Independence Park and get a hard look, especially if we're doing a bond and we're possibly going to put some other facilities. I would love to have a hard look at that. I know it's not on here, but I would be willing to amend if we could afford the dollars for the PER just to get the look. Everything has moved 15, 20%.
I will say on page 18 that's up in front of us, there is PER for future bond referendum, drainage, streets, parks, and facilities. So that may be where it would be captured right there. So.
Okay, I see it down at the bottom. So,
I just had one more thing. The public safety training and education building, is that something that's new being built, Mr. Upton?
that's on Independence, the old fire station 4, and again, that's in design as well.
And so it says also renovations right below it. So it's just all together.
So that's the building. That's the existing PSB. The one above it is the old fire station 4 construction. That make sense? PSB, the one below building renovations is for the retrofit of the building. It's taken some of the second floor former tax office, converting that to usable space for emergency management and training, and then reconfiguring a little bit of the first floor lobby. So there's separate entrances between courts and that's all under design now.
It also expands the EOC and provides additional capacity in the and capabilities in the EOC.
Thank you.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah, I got a couple on there I want to find out on. The bridge across Clear Creek, that should come off of TxDOT all-system bridge systems.
I think this is our match. Huh? I think this is our match. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor and Councilman Owen, we have a match associated
It's
with
our match, not the total cost.
that. Is correct. It is our match and also our ability to put a 10-foot trail on it as well.
Okay, and there's another on the train depot. Wouldn't that come out of the hot tax? Hotel,
No,
motel
it's not
tax,
the hot
or
tax.
renovation?
We've got a program now from PEG funds, and you'll see something for that next month. It wasn't a good fit as we got into it for the hot tax. So, but the PEG funds is a different pot that we can make use of.
Are you looking at making it an office space?
Want to get a little preview of that, Joshua?
Sure, yeah. So for the time being, with the budget that we have available and the resources that we have to renovate it and keep it in use, it'll be part storage, part studio space for my department. So think sort of interview, backdrop, things like that. ultimately, we'd like to work towards it being office space for the communications team, but we got to kind of take it a step at a time.
You know, if you move in there, we're going to charge you rent.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Good deal. Any other questions, comments on this portion? Member Carbone?
If you go to the priority 4 slide, that fuel island, you said that's to add the 3rd fuel island out there?
So, Mr. Carbone, Councilman Carbone, we have currently a fuel island located at Orange Street at the service center. And then we also have a fuel island at Hill House where the traffic center is. This would then to put one over by Fire Station 8 and Reflection Bay in the wastewater treatment plant to have fueling capabilities on that side of State Highway 288.
Which is why it's critical, number 4, that's one that we can kick down the road a little bit if we need.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good deal. Yeah. Oh,
Come on, you know I need your guidance.
Where's the training academy? You're talking about shooting range?
Yeah, the
firing
shooting range, driving range, and
Driving
classroom, yeah. Does that need, because this is tax back, right? Or would that go under the GO bucket, Eric?
CO.
CO.
And just to be clear, I think there's been a little flux. I mean, as we get into this deeper, we couldn't alter some of these if council elects to move some of the traditional public safety items into a GO. You know, that's your prerogative completely. But where's that at? There's a PER in there somewhere, right? Flip over to that.
So the PERs are located down here.
Yeah, but don't we have something specific for the?
We have
driving
we have a specific PER that we are conducting right now for the shooting facility and the driving.
We've already
track, right?
budgeted for that.
What's that?
Okay, so it's coming up on your August agenda apparently. So it won't show up here because you're already doing the PER. The monies, we're not going to be ready for any kind of a big question on that for 22, 23.
Okay, I just want to make sure it'll get in the priority box
Yeah,
soon.
out years. Okay.
Cool.
Good deal. Any other questions, comments? All right, Eric, let's move on.
All right. And I'm definitely going to charge Josh rent for living in the train station. All right, the water and sewer revenue supported issuances. So we're taking off our property tax hat and we're putting on our utility management hat. Just some background, we are legally required to generate enough revenue to pay our debt service obligations. In FY21, we split this system out into 2 funds. We have the Water and Sewer Debt Service Fund and the Water and Sewer Operating Fund. In FY22, Council authorized an increase in water and sewer rates by 5%. And we know that the debt payment amount is fixed for next year at approximately $27 million. Projects in the CIP are funded by water and sewer revenue, and they are needed to ensure a safe and reliable system with adequate capacity to serve customers. The CIP contains $83.32 million in ongoing projects and planned debt that we expect to sell in FY23. Among this amount is $13.76 million that will be paid back using impact fees. Similar to what we just saw, you have your current debt obligations, which is debt we're going to keep paying on, and that'll slowly roll off over time as those obligations are paid for. You have the FY23 CIP, which we're considering tonight. We will sell debt for that FY23 CIP in the spring of next year, FY23. And then those debt payments will begin in FY24. Those debt payments are paid for by user fees and impact fees. And so therefore, they can be a major driver of water and sewer rates for our residents. FY23 CIP, what we're discussing tonight, that's a major lever for council. However, it's not going to have an impact until FY24. Some quick notes on the new and improved rate model for FY23. We've been able to bring this capacity in-house, meaning we handle the model ourselves. We understand it deeply. We update it. We don't need to pay a contractor to maintain it. It is a more transparent and easier to understand model. For the first time ever, we were able to, when we presented the CIP in March, provide council, hey, here are the list of projects, and here's what the rate model is going to look like next to it, so you can consider the cost along with the projects. And we're really proud of that improvement. We also validated the model against prior predictions to make sure that it worked correctly and as expected. Quick note, even the best models can't really understand what the weather's going to be. If we could predict the weather, we wouldn't be here. But we do know that things like droughts can happen, right? Like we're in now, and that can drive revenue increases, but it also increases the cost of water production if the drought gets too strong. On the other hand, if it rains too much, people will use less water because they don't need to irrigate as much. All of those can affect revenue more than something like a 5% increase could. The model is also built to show us what the minimum utility rate increase needed is. It's not giving us a level, a B level, a C level. It is saying this is the minimum amount of revenue that you need to bring in order to meet the requirements that are built into sort of this enterprise fund operating system. Those requirements, if you recall, we have a bond coverage ratio of 1.15, which means it's essentially you need to have 15% net revenue once you subtract out your expenses, 15% more than your debt service. You need to have 20% of your average debt service for water and sewer revenue bonds reserved and restricted for debt service. This is one of the reasons we've moved to COs since then. And the enterprise operating fund has a updated 15% operating reserve that we need to meet. That's a city policy, with the other city policy being between the enterprise fund operating fund and the enterprise fund debt fund that we have a 25% reserve. I won't read it because it's not super interesting reading, but this is the financial policy as snipped, and there's a link there if you'd ever like to view it. Even though we've switched to COs, in the past we've sold water and sewer revenue bonds. Part of the stipulations with those were that we kept 20% of the average annual debt service within the debt fund, and we don't touch it till that debt is paid off. We're essentially going to have to keep that there parked in the debt service fund. So even though COs don't really have that level of requirement, you'll see that money kind of hanging out there in the enterprise fund as we slowly pay off those older water and sewer revenue bonds. And we'll highlight those in the budget when you see them so you know what they are. The bond coverage ratio requirement, we always like to show this formula. It's your revenue minus your operating expenses divided by your debt service. As we put the budget together, we'll be able to get this number to council, but what we do is we calibrate the model to make sure we hit 1.15. That is the bare minimum that we need to hit in order to be able to sell debt next year and to meet our bond coverage agreements that we've agreed to in previous sales. The rate model is still at 13%. That's what we're looking at for next year. The changes that the city has made that allowed us to get it to 13%, down to 13%, is to issue water and sewer debt as COs instead of revenue bonds. We switched some currently cash-funded projects to COs, and we've moved some projects to later years within the CIP. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Well, good evening again, Mayor and Council. Continue on with the same theme that we just covered with regards to priorities, but just a little bit of a change, is that this is projects in process, or same as tied with other funding obligations associated with Texas Water Development Board, TxDOT themselves, developers, but also tied into the projects above that, for example, Councilman Owens was talking with regards to the bridge over Clear Creek. We have a water line tied to that, so one of those projects is the replacement of that water line, so that is critical and considered to need to be done when we start talking in priority 2 projects. But those projects are also linked, so we have some water and sewer infrastructure with some street projects as well. But these are projects that are critical in nature. Priority 1 moving forward, surface water plant, developer-driven projects where we do oversizing cost agreements where we pay for the additional sizing we need for the entire service area. Priority 2 projects are projects that are new, repair, replacement of critical infrastructure, and as I mentioned just a moment ago, are tied to other projects. Such, for example, Willowcrest subdivision sanitary sewer. Rehabilitation is also tied with the current project as well for drainage and streets. Priority projects number 3 or actually we'll just continue. We have 2 sheets associated with priority 2 projects. Bailey Water Plant's ongoing right now. Sherwood Waterline Replacement would be an example tied to the street reconstruction is funded in the 2019 bond program. And finally, our next one is our priority 3 projects. These could be postponed with moderate impact, but could be up for consideration if necessary. And then finally, our priority 4 project. Again, this was tied to the fuel island because it can be used besides with general fund, but also enterprise fund. We split the cost and share that, so that project would be tied together. Again, taking a look overall, priority projects 1 through 4, totaling $63.9 million funded across there. And again, I'll just go ahead and revisit those priority ones, priority rankings, those priority 1 projects tied to outside funding obligations or projects in process, projects tied to new, repair, or replacement of critical infrastructure. Priority 3 projects could be postponed with moderate inconvenience, and of course, priority 4 would be postponed with no major repercussions. With regards to operation and maintenance, each project does have a component. For fiscal year 23, the additional O&M for those projects in 22 is just a little over $1 million. And then for enterprise projects completed in fiscal year 23, heading in for fiscal year 24 is approximately $4.1 million. With that, I'll go ahead and turn this back over to Mr. Roche and to you, Council, for any questions or comments.
Back to you, Mayor. And
All right.
council members.
So with that, any questions about our enterprise side of the house? Member Camcar?
Eric, can we talk about that rate model for a second?
Yes, sir.
So we brought that in-house. That saves a little bit of money. My question is, who pressure tests that rate model? We have an outside anybody that puts a second set of eyes on that comes in cold and looks at that?
So this is the first year of bringing it in-house. It is a modified version of that. What we did is simplified the model. The model last time was a little too much for a city of our size. We needed a model that we could run quickly so we could bring the council multiple scenarios. What we did is we calibrated the new model versus the old model for prior years to make sure, hey, here's what we spent in FY21, here's what we think our connections are going to be in FY22. Oh, good, look, it's tracking and predicting the same number. So we validated it against the FY22 rates. And then what we did is called backcasting. So we went back to something like FY20 and said, hey, give me all of our information for FY19. Here's where the fund was at. Here was our health. And we saw what did the model say the next year would look like. So if we're looking at FY18, tell us what FY19 would look at. And it predicted the same results as the previous model that we had outsourced to a company.
I apologize. I've done a terrible job. I did not communicate very well. Let me try again. So is there anybody else outside that's not a City of Pearland employee that's looking at this new rate model that's pressure testing this?
No, not at this point. I would say it's fairly pressure tested because it is only slightly modified from the model that a company had put together, and that was, kind of a way to pressure test it to begin with, is that we had outsourced it.
I think our team does a tremendous job. They balance a lot. This team, when they finalize that rate, is going to put them through the ringer. I have no doubt about that because the math is difficult. I would highly, highly, highly encourage and would love to see us have an outside contractor or vendor review that model. It's the first time we're test driving it. The first time you buy a new edition of a Ford truck, there's kinks you work out. And it just feels like for the $50,000 or $60,000, whatever that number, that peace of mind, I think would be well worth it until we have that higher degree of comfort. And when we say new model and the sensitivities around that, I'd like to have that extra set of eyes. And then the COs and GOs that we're moving to kind of release that burden, where are the CO rates right now and where are the GO rates? I know you're not, Mr. Roebuck, but is there a big spread between those right now?
I wouldn't be able to comment on that with the recent changes in the interest rates. The spread on those has always been, I would say, like around 0.25%, I want to say. It's not a huge spread. The main savings by switching to certificates of obligation has been that we don't need to take money and stick it in the debt reserve for 20 or 30 years, however that average life of the debt.
And so the cash reserve requirement's lower, and then in the presentation, we're keeping the cash requirements as if they were a GO. So explain to me, I guess, where we're getting the benefit of using the COs if we're gonna essentially perform as if it was a GO.
Sure. And sorry if I misspoke earlier. So the existing water and sewer debt that's been sold in the past, any money that those that we're obligated to set aside for the life of that debt has been set aside and will continue to be set aside. Just because we go to COs doesn't mean we can bypass those previous agreements. As we go to COs, we will not be setting aside that money. We will be using our own calculations. So you have your 15% operating fund reserve. That 15% essentially applies to the new debt, where just like in the general fund, you pay debt out of there.
Can we just clarify that for the next reading of the presentation? The way it was presented made it sound like we're keeping it, whether it's new or old, that we're at this GO standard. And I think this rate model is going to go through the ringer, and we're going to have to work through. We already pushed out projects last year to bring a rate that was semi-palatable, and 13%, I have a funny feeling, is not going to be palatable. So I would just like to find whatever ways we can do to minimize those impacts. So.
Good deal. Questions, comments?
Yeah.
Okay. Member Cade?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Good.
Okay. I tend to agree with Councilwoman Campcar. I would like to see on this model, I would certainly like to see some sort of either peer review or auditing process until this model gets ironed out over the long term. The last thing that I would like to see is that we feel like internally that our model is great and it's working exactly the way we designed it, but yet, oh wow, I forgot about that item. So we don't want to get caught, with our pants down, so to speak, and have to come back and deal with something like a water billing issue or something like that, right? Just a minor oversight over time can add to a large issue. So let's, I'd rather, spend a little money and hire somebody as far as an auditor to make sure that process is going well. And then once we all feel good about that process, then I think we can move on to a peer review type model. And just my 2 cents. Sometimes it's easier to overlook it when you're the person in the middle of it. So, just my 2 cents there.
Member Cade?
I'm sorry to pick on the natatorium, but I've got to ask another couple of questions. On here it says it's an air handling replacement. I know 5 or 6 years ago there was air quality issues in the natatorium and something was done to fix that. Is that a replacement for whatever was done at that time?
Councilwoman Kay, that was maintenance done. That was at that time. Maintenance on that particular, on the air handler for the Dectron unit is costly. And so that was done. So we're looking now in the future to move forward with that program to evaluate and determine a new source for that.
With the cost this high
Yes.
per year, or is it always this high per year? Or is this just an unusually high maintenance year for the natatorium?
This is a replacement of the HVAC system.
So it is unusually high.
Yeah.
This is original, right? So it's
Yes.
15, 12 years old?
12
years
to
old?
13 years old.
13 years old, so it's time.
It's time.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way, other than going through agendas, to find out how much we've spent as a city on natatorium repairs? And
We've got a paper actually coming this week that's going to talk about how the facility has performed very well, covering its cost, over-delivered on what was put to the voters back in 2007. And so it'll wrap up and show operations and give a flavor for the capital maintenance cost to date.
I have one question about that. So if we have a business or a natatorium that's charging a fee for service, why are those fees for service not being put aside in order to manage maintenance?
So the operations of this, the way it has been set up and was put to the voters, as I understand, Mayor was around, is that the operations would pay 70%, 50% of the operating costs. There was never...
I think the first benchmark was 50%.
50?
The hope was that it would cover the cost of all maintenance and operation of the facility, but at a minimum, 50% of the maintenance M&O of the building.
So it was not set up that the user fees, and the user fees are a portion of how that building is used, keep in mind. I mean, we use that for public events and all kinds of other things, but it was not said that it would be covering all the operating, let alone the capital replacements, et cetera.
I would ask, though, given our current state of affairs, I mean, we're looking at our M&O, and we have, increasing costs associated with various departments and projects and capital improvements and going out for bonds and things of that sort. I'd really like to understand what our current cost model looks like as opposed to a break-even cost model when we have this discussion next time. So as far as user fees go, what would it cost for how much of an increase in user fees would it be to break even on that product?
So we can do the calculation, but it would be retrofitting how that was presented and promised to the people when they voted for that back in 2007.
I understand, and I think that, and excuse me if I'm out of turn here, but I would think that it would still be beneficial for the community to understand that we're doing everything that we can, and for those utilizers of that resource, I don't go to the natatorium. So for the utilizers of that resource in the city, I think it's only fair that they pay their share of the maintenance and operations versus putting it on the burdening the taxpayers with that. Just my 2 cents.
District's part.
Well, the school district has to pay a certain percent of the maintenance, anything over $20,000, if I'm correct. And so, yeah, the school district's going to continue to do what they got to do. I mean, per their contract, I think they have 10 years to go on that contract, if I'm not mistaken. So,
About 200,000 behind right now.
no.
Oh, yeah, we're all mixing up. So we'll show you. Why don't you wait till you get the report this week, and then you'll see that, and then we can go from there in terms of like what it would take up from there to retrofit and go back on what was said to have that cover all its costs.
Yeah, so
I'm not saying retrofit. I mean,
I'll give an example. COVID obviously got in the way of a lot of things, but in 2020, for example, it was on track in 2020 alone to not only cover its expenses and maintenance and operation, but it was also going to probably return about $100,000 back to the general fund. So but COVID interrupted, a lot of that. I'm not sure where we are in this year. I'm interested to get the memo on it and see where we are. So it has performed the way it was sold to the voters at least 50%, but we've had years where it's done far better than that. And like I said, in 2020 was going to approach and go and exceed the M&O side of things and actually return additional dollars to the general fund.
so is that just primarily based on
The number of
enrollments?
The number of memberships.
Membership.
Right. And so we already have a rate structure, and I don't know when was the last time we've addressed fees at the natatorium. I know that's part of our fees and that ordinance and resolution and all that. So I'm not sure the last time we raised or made a rate action on that. Harry could tell us.
So the revenue that's collected for the Recreation Center and Natatorium, the primary sources of revenue are through membership sales, guest passes, and facility rentals. And that includes rentals of the banquet spaces and also rentals of the pool space within the natatorium. We have not increased our prices for memberships, but that's something that after we present the information to you, if that's something you would like for us to take a look at, we can definitely do some market studies and see where that fits within the market and make some recommendations.
And when we write that up, we'll too talk about the profile. I mean, there are programs that pay closer to quote unquote market, but there's also the users that there's pickleball and seniors, and part of the facility, anything like that, is trying to provide alternatives for kids and others for recreating and gatherings. So it's not a typical lifetime from that standpoint where, you know, you would gear your fees towards covering all that. It's designed to make it open and accessible to a larger group of residents. So,
I agree, and I see the value in that. I want to understand exactly what the cost benefit analysis of that building is as it pertains to city funds and taxpayer dollars for people that don't otherwise use that facility. That's it.
kind of like schools.
Schools use them all the time.
No, I'm talking about people who pay for schools.
People pay for schools, but you can't replace the value of an educated workforce in a community. So there's no value you can place on that. So,
Yep. Amen.
Trent, a question I asked, and I want to know, is it just the natatorium or is it the combined natatorium rec center?
No, how much would it cost just to build the natatorium?
To build in it?
Or how much did we pay to build, is there a way to?
One question was,
So that they were built together, and I think the budget was, I think we ended up somewhere around 17 million on construction. Overall budget was maybe closer to 20. And I don't know that we ever broke it down specifically between the two buildings.
And I
two
will say,
portions of the building.
there was, because the law had changed, the state law had changed that the ISD could not expend funds off property for that type of an asset. So the where it's located was located on ISD property, and so their contribution to that was the land. I can't remember how many acres it sits on and how many acres and what that was valued at, but there was a number associated with that. And then the Economic Development Corporation paid for the difference between a 25-meter pool and a 50-meter pool. The 50-meter pool is better suited for competition meets and those types of things. And so their number was 1.9 million to pay for the difference between 25 and 50 meter, if I remember correctly.
So 17 to 20 million for the whole building and the natatorium.
Ballpark. I'm trying to pull it up right now and give you the breakdown.
20 rings a bell to me, but that's been 12 years.
We could just build.
Mr. Mayor, can I make one more clarification? And Clay, my question, I kind of see the natatorium and the rec center as one, and I know it's not, but that question relates to both. My question relates to both.
Yeah.
Back to the fees on the natatorium and rec center. With inflation running at about 9% right now, a lot of it being in energy, I think it's something that we do need to take a look at as far as what we do charge for the services there, because to heat and cool that building through the year is going to cost a lot more in the upcoming years.
Camcar?
We're talking about the water wastewater, and I had a question. Looking at the deck on slide 38, we have the Hill House Road Annex on phase 2. Can I get some understanding on kind of how that's ending up in the water wastewater bucket?
Sure. So with regards to that, Councilman Camcar, is that both the general fund or tax-based, property tax-based fund, but also the enterprise fund does use that facility, because on the Hill House side will be fleet. We'll be over there, so all of our fleet repairs. So a portion of that facility is paid with our water and wastewater revenues.
This is a priority 2, which is kind of like the important, well, very close to high importance. Is that because it's tied to another project as opposed to
Correct. It's also tied. It's also tied to the Orange Street Phase 2 project that would be building the rest of the warehouse, demolishing all the old buildings out there, and creating a warehouse infrastructure associated with public works and also engineering.
I would say this. I think we're going to have a contentious discussion when we set water rates and projects and things like this. I know this Hill House item is high on the list. That's a place to cut if we have to cut. I don't know that anybody here, I haven't heard anybody say we're going to do the 13% rate hike.
So
if I can interject, just a reminder, the rates for next year, that debt's already been sold. So if anything comes off this list, it won't affect rates until FY24.
Thank you, Eric.
And Robert, we can talk about it further, but when we looked at this before and the idea of splitting these, there was an integration between Orange Street and needing to do that and Hill House, right?
That's
And
correct.
This is a proportional share from the enterprise portion to Hill House. So.
Correct. There's an enterprise, that's a portion of that. And also, if you'll see on there, Orange Street Service Center Phase 2. So both projects that are line number 2 and 3, both of those are also funded out of the general fund and out of the enterprise fund because they are both departments utilize that, both facilities across the way. And all city facilities or city agencies also utilize that as well. So they are both tied together.
It's just, it's very difficult. And I know that some of these projects, we want to bind them together to say, oh, if you do this one, you're hurting this guy too. But some of these facilities are going in real fast and it's causing this. In fact, I mean, it sounds like this is going to go in the wastewater calculation on some level, whether it's this year or next year. I mean, this is not a facility that moves water in the traditional sense. It's not a pump station. And so there's sensitivity here. And so somebody has to at some point think about who pays for it. And I understand we need to have facilities where we can do engineering and have meetings, but it's not the lift station rehab. And that's just
It does house our personnel and our materials and everything that goes into maintaining and operating that system.
I
And,
respectfully, I
just
hear you.
to
We
kind
need
of
those people. I hear
understand, just to put a little perspective on it, we have done the first phase of that Orange Street project, and we've kind of left the rest of the site out there in a state of flux, not finished. We lack parking, flow, a lot of issues out there with not moving the next phase of that project forward. So,
Debbie, I hear you. I truly do. Just at some point, somebody's got to pay for this. And as Member Koza pointed out, families are dealing with 9%. And at some point, you have to slim or you have to put things off. Do we want to put the lift station rehab? I don't know that we want to. I'm just throwing this out there. I'm throwing it on the table. We can say no, and 6 of the people may say we want to do this project, but there are certain items that are more critical than others. And we're going to have a hard discussion around rates here coming up. I'm just putting that marker out there. That's all I'm saying. So,
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none. Eric, are you got one more piece or are you done?
We have one more piece, which is a surface water plant update, which I will hand over to Robert Upton.
Well, and continuing on our presentation again, thank you, Mayor and Council. As part of any of our projects, as we move forward, any of our updates, we also include a quick surface water treatment plant update. Abbreviated project history here. I'm not going to go through each of this, but this is revisiting what we have presented before. September of 2020, we presented our guaranteed maximum price to council for approval with PLW. Summarizing it all together into the project. As we continue to realize, as this is a full breakdown here, funding sources are from Texas Water Development Board in the form of a low interest loan. Moving forward, you can see each of the bond sales comprising a total eventually of $175,500,000. Broken down further into our encumbrances, and then showing that we still currently have a project contingency at $6.2 million. As we're continuing forward, as of the May construction pay estimate, that is our most current pay estimate right now since May of 2022. We've spent $95 million has come in pay requests out of the $137 million associated with the contractor's guaranteed maximum price, so about 69.6%. The time computed, we're at about 77% of the time allocated, and these are all the days from when we did pre-construction services until we were looking to bring water into the system, as under the contract. So remaining days under the original contract time is around 345 days or 22.7%. Over the last 45 days, work has been continuing, although a challenge is associated, of course, with supply chain. So we've been focusing specific as we get materials in, installing our slope paving on the northern side of the canal, our raw water pump station. Working now with our dewatering building is now largely complete with all equipment installed. Great item that we have is that we're installing our membrane racks right now inside the membrane treatment building. And we're continuing to work in our maintenance building and then our chlorination building as well. Moving forward and looking ahead, as we take a look to the next 45 days, is that we're going to be working on our sanitary lift station. We have been installing the sanitary force main up to the connection point south of Broadway. Complete the interior finishes in our operations building. Continuing to work on our electrical. As we've talked and mentioned before, electrical main switchgear has been delayed due to manufacturing, and we've gotten 2 of the 3 components in. So those are in. We're waiting on the one more section, and then hopefully that we can get center point in and starting to energize and getting power running through. And then continuing with regards to our transmission mains, we do have a installation of our fiber optic line. And with regards to some of our tie-ins, we're waiting on some U.S.-made fittings as required by American Iron and Steel. With that on our completion schedule, moving forward is what we look at water in the distribution system. Original water per the original contract construction schedule was December of 2022. As we know, market volatility has changed that. We are now on a schedule that is fluid, and I say that's kind of like water in the system, but it's fluid because of that. We're changing week by week. Deliveries are delaying that. We're doing workarounds, working with vendors, working with our consultants, working with our funding obligations to be able to make this project continue to move forward. As of July 14th, our schedule is that we are looking to try and bring water into the distribution system in June of 2023. We had previously reported in October, so we've been able to move up the delivery of water into the system. However, substantial completion is still looking way out in October just due to concrete for our paving operations, not necessarily for operations of the water system. Currently, again, right now is that our overrun as we run through, looking about 120 days beyond the original contract schedule. As we continue to talk, as I mentioned several times already, is implications of our supply chain issues. The only remedy that our construction manager at risk has is contract time. We've talked about that several times in our updates. It's contract time. We're still expecting the project to be completed within the existing budget. We have no new altering scope changes that have been made. No new funding has been requested. And currently right now, no additional time has been requested at this moment. And then finally, I have a couple slides I'd like to show a couple pictures of where things are progressing. As you can tell, things have changed since our last update. You're seeing some more of our buildings getting finished, roofs being installed. You'll see in the lower left-hand corner is our, lower left-hand corner is our MRI system, or which is our plate settlers. Basically, that's the first process of our treatment system. That's coming along very well. Then you have the membrane room located in the lower right-hand side corner. And then finally on the next slide is an overall site picture that you can see from our aerial photography, and then also a direct drop down straight down from a vertical position. So at this time, that completes my presentation, Mr. Pearson. Thank you.
All right, any questions, comments on the update on the water surface treatment plant? Member Koza?
So if I heard that right, Robert, we're looking at coming in around what we shot for. And
so our original goal was to have water in the system, as I said, back in December 2022, January 23, at water system. We're going to be in June as of July of the 14th of this year. That's our still goal, is to try and get water. We're going to be starting to do some preliminary testing on some of our equipment. We've been working well with Gulf Coast Water Authority, where we can do some testing and then put water right back into the canal. So we're in that process, getting ready to start in September, October with testing of equipment.
And as far as the delays that we have, we're looking at no more cost for where we're budgeted at. It's basically time that we're looking at.
That'd be correct.
For product coming in to be able to complete it.
Correct. As per our contract with them, time is their only remedy. Unless it's an owner-driven change, then you could look at a cost increase. But as of right now, it is only time that the contractor has.
Okay, thank you.
Member Owens?
Yeah, back on, I guess it's page 48. I was wondering why we're using certificates of obligation rather than this, knowing what this facility is and the PER it's done on it, on selling the bonds the other way rather than on COs.
The updated financial policy provides for using the enterprise COs so that we avoid the significant requirements for increasing rates and just having money sitting in cash to meet the debt ratios. The COs avoid that. So it's the same end result, but it saves the system money for all those years. So that's what the council adopted with the new financial policy.
So this is why previously it was asked to come in and be able to sell certificates of obligation on revenue type bonding.
That's what the logic was when that was presented to the council, yes.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Any other presentation? Okay. So with that, we need to, I guess, move to adoption. Make sure I read this right. Yeah, move to adoption of the the 5-year capital improvement program. So with that, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Kamkar?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Cade?
Aye.
Councilmember Berry?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Goza?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, moving forward. Where were we on that? Did you do that? Yeah. Member Hernandez, would you present number 3, please?
Ready for this, Member Cade? Yes, I make a motion that we consider and possibly take action on resolution number R2022-158.
Second.
Second. Oh, sorry.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report, please.
Well, with that enthusiasm, looking forward to having consideration of this. This is budgeted fleet purchases and significant lead times, but this part of our current 22 program just gets us under the budget with those allocated for these vehicles and puts the orders in so we can have a solid fleet. Nothing to add. This is off the buy board. Nothing to ask.
All right, questions, comments, concerns from council? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Cade?
Aye.
Councilmember Berry?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Koza?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Kamkar?
Aye.
The motion passes.
All right, moving to new business item number 4. Member Cade, would you present that, please?
Consideration and possible action, resolution number R 2022-163. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We do have a staff report, and then we have one member of the public to speak on this.
Thank you, Mayor. This is brought to you as a requirement for the council to bless, but this does come from the board of the Pearland Municipal Management District number 2, and I believe Matt has a few comments, and then introductions from representatives of the board. So,
good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight before you, we have a request from our Pearland Municipal Management District 2. The Pearland Municipal Management District 2 was created back when we were looking to start make the improvements to the 288 corridor back in 2012. The district was authorized by the City Council in December of 2012, was approved by the legislature in May of 2013, and then in November election of that same year, a 10-cent maintenance and operation property tax levy to be used in the corridor was approved. So just as for reference, the district's about 3.8 miles from Magnolia Parkway all the way up to the Beltway, so it's a significant length. It has about 1,483 acres in the district. The district has gone into multiple agreements for the implementation of our $24 million State Highway 288 Corridor Master Improvement Plan that's under construction right now with TxDOT, BTG, the city, and others to provide the perpetual maintenance of those improvements. At the time that the district's boundaries were created, and you can see the boundaries are in your packet, there were a few homesteads in the district on the east side of the district at 288. And so those two districts, the board is requesting that you remove those from the boundaries of the district so they would no longer be paying the tax that is charged to businesses in the corridor. This would reduce the, in addition to the homesteads, there's also just some residentially zoned land. This would reduce the acreage from 1,483 acres to 1,424, or a reduction of about 3.9%. There's multiple reasons the district is recommending this. Mostly importantly is in 2019, the Texas legislature passed a bill that made significant changes to the tax provisions that govern management districts. And these are the same provisions that govern the city that you're very familiar with regarding tax rate and levy process, which has significantly impacted the district's recurring annual revenue. In 2020, the two owner-occupied homes values increased by 14 and 19% respectively. And these high values increases combined with slow commercial property growth caused a significant reduction of 20% in the district's revenue. As you know, the district is intended for businesses, and the two owner-occupied residential properties would no longer have to pay the tax if removed from the district. The district currently has a strong cash balance of about $4.5 million. That is a result of minimal expenses during the delay of the lengthy construction of the toll lanes. And as the project was delayed, the district continued to accumulate funds. And so the board needs the flexibility to set a tax rate that reflects the funds on hand, revenue generated from the annual property tax, and obligations for maintenance that are difficult to balance with the unpredictable fluctuations of the two residential homesteads that are in the district. So at its July 13th meeting, the board voted to request the City Council approve consent resolution in support of excluding the homesteads and other residential zoned properties from the district boundaries. So these properties combined in 2021 were only $918 in revenue to the district and represented only $1.2 million in value. So those are less than 0.2% of the entire revenue and value of the district. So tonight I have Sue Ann Johnson here with us, who's the attorney for the district, and David Pattersons, who's with Assessments of the Southwest, and he's the tax collector, assessor, assist us with these matters. And as you know, the PDC staff has a contract with the management district to handle their affairs and all the maintenance and ongoing operations of the district. So happy to answer any questions, Mayor.
All right, good deal. Is that complete staff report? All right, turn it over to, we have one member of the public that requested to speak on this, Mr. Rishi Patel. Rishi, you know the drill. Thank you for being here tonight. Name and address for the record and 3 minutes to speak. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Councilmember, Mayor. Rishi Patel, 12213 Rosemont Lane, Pearland, Texas, 77584. Just so you know, I've served on this board since the board was created. We currently own a property in the district. And on the last meeting, I was opposed against removing these two properties Mr. Buchanan is talking about. And let me tell you why. The corner lot, I don't know where the maps are, but if you see, eventually when Smith Ranch Road expands, this eventually becomes a commercial lot. Not one time has the current owner come disputed asking to remove from this tax authority. What I'm asking you to consider is, if you remove these properties and it does become commercial lots, they will benefit from the taxing, which is being paid by everybody else, and this property will not be able to be taken back into the district, or it would be very difficult to. As Mr. Buchanan pointed out, it's a very small percentage or dollar amount that these residents are paying. So why take this matter right now? We can, at the future date, if needed, we could always remove them 2-3 years from now. The district currently, just like Mr. Buchanan said, is just cash rich. It's sitting on $4.5 million. We have not received what the annual maintenance costs will be. We've been estimated it, but those estimates can change. It can go much lower or it could go much higher. So at this point, I would ask you to pause on this and not allow this to go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. With that, we'll turn it over to questions, comments from council. Member Koza.
So along that same line, what is the future use of the two pieces of property that Matt wants to remove from the corridor?
Just might be good to put Exhibit A.
Yeah, I'm going to put it up right there.
There you go. There's
So
five pieces.
these properties right now, as you can see, 2, 3, and 4 are zoned residential, and 1 and 5 are zoned BP 288. So number 1 and number 5 is the location of the two homesteads, and then 2, 3, and 4 are residentially zoned, but there are no homesteads on those properties as we speak today. Now, properties 2 and 3 have had a pre-development. It's been a little while ago for someone that wanted to do exactly what happened to the east there and put a single lane road in with a cul-de-sac and probably be able to put in 8 or 10 single family homes.
Okay, but as far as the future use of this property, what does the city have it on the maps as?
A business park 288. So that's a specific zoning district that's up and down the 288 corridor for commercial uses.
Okay.
But is obviously occupied
so
right
it is-
now as a single family home.
Correct.
Yeah.
I understand. It's like, I'm assuming got an ag exemption,
Yeah, so they're not paying,
minimal tax.
$150, $200 taxes, yeah.
All right. So as Mr. Patel said, as far as if this property was to turn commercial, then they would be allowed to benefit in the corridor from, being able to be backed out now.
Sure, they would be if they were in the corridor. But I would tell you that if you look around the corridor, you can see there's many commercial properties that abut up against the district. I mean, there had to be a line drawn somewhere. So if you look along McCard or if you look along, 518, there's lots of properties that are up against the district that aren't in the boundaries of the
Right. But that was voted by the voters at that time. So
Council created the district and we created the boundaries here as the city working with the property owners. It wasn't created.
and council did it at the time. So I mean, you had to draw a line
Somewhere,
and
yeah.
this was included at the time.
Correct.
Thank you.
Member Kamkar?
Mayor, didn't we have a P&Z
We did,
change
and
for somewhere in this area where they were combining all their lots?
yeah, so it's above parcel 5 there. So it's that block that's right there. So the future Wooten Road would go right along the edge of 5 there and back out to Smith Ranch Road.
And just for clarity, so parcels 1 wants to come out of or is being asked to de-annex, and what is the other parcel?
Parcel, the two homesteads, which are the, difficulty and challenging for the board to set a tax rate on, because obviously they go up and then we can only increase the levy. So if we drop the levy to use our cash, as explained in the memo, and I can maybe let David get up and explain it to you better than I can. But 1 and 5 are the actual homesteads, and those are the only 2 homesteads in the entire
And that's
district.
the ones that we're talking about de-annexing.
Yeah, well, then we propose also to take out the residential zoned properties of 2, 3, and 4 also. So that we don't have to go through this again if somebody, I imagine 2 and 3 are going to develop residentially.
And the attorney for the district is here?
Suwan is.
Could you come and speak? I'd like to I'm in information gathering mode here. Mr. Wong, what precipitated this discussion? I feel like we got like a good memo, and I kind of understand that residential and here don't go, but how did we get to the point where this is even an agenda item, and how do we get to where we are now, where we're talking about today?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Suwan Johnson. I am an attorney with Allen Boone Humphreys Robinson, and we serve as general counsel to the management district. This discussion actually started last year when the district was looking at adopting its 2021 tax rate. As Matt said, because there is residential properties in the district, we are subject to the truth in taxation rollback requirements of the water code. And due to certain circumstances, because those homesteads values went up, the district was forced to reduce its O&M tax rate. And just for background, the district has a cap of a 10% O&M rate. It has no bonds outstanding. The district, because it does not have any bonds outstanding, the district has been determined by the board of directors to be what we call a developed district. And as a developed district under the water code, the district can only increase year over year its tax rate no more than what would increase an average residential homestead's tax bill by 3.5%.
Let me ask a question. So then, essentially, because there's a residential parcel here, they're in a different regulatory structure than if it was strictly a commercial or a road. Is that?
That is correct.
Are there any other residents in the PMD1?
The two homesteads, and as Matt said, tracks 3, 4, and
2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4 are zoned as residential.
They're the only residential group.
That is it.
There would be people that live in apartments and multifamily in the district, but not that declare a homestead for a single family
So you
home.
would not have that same regulatory structure.
That is correct. And so the ask is to give the board of directors, which is a 7-member appointed board. All of the members are appointed by you as council members. The board felt that it was in their best interest to have the flexibility based on the advice of the PEDC staff to annually set a tax rate that is sufficient to cover the maintenance obligations that the management district has undertaken. In some years, that may be using more cash on hand. In other years, it may be a fluctuation of the tax rate. But again, they cannot go above 10 cents for their O&M rate.
Is it unreasonable to think with all of the work that's happening in that corridor that those maintenance needs will go up over time?
I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, right now, as we say in the memo, we were only spending around $150,000 a year just mowing and picking up trash. Now, the actual level of service that we're going to provide, as Mr. Patel mentioned, we don't know exactly, but we're trying to budget something around $1 million a year. Now, the board's going to have the ability to, how many times are we going to pick up trash? How many times are we going to mow? Many of you that were here when we first created this district, when we first did the cleanup, there might have been, I don't know how many thousands of bags of trash out there. So it's a very high usage area. I mean, I would easily say that 400,000 people a week come into this corridor for shopping and work and all those things, visits. So we do need a lot more care than we've had in the past, and that was the purpose of creating this district.
And what precipitated them delaying from a year to last year to now? Was there just other things going on?
I think obviously, I think it took us all by surprise. The significant drop that we had of 20% of our revenue to drop in 1 year, and that kind of raised a red flag. Well, wait a minute here. If we can't, and obviously the problem is, and I gave this analogy, if someone pulled up out front here and said, "Hey, I got a Brinks truck out here, and I'm going to give the city all this money, drop your levy for the next 2 years." Well, you wouldn't do that, because the next third year you'd come back and your base then of your taxable revenue would be that, and you'd be at 3%, 3%, 3%. So if we get rid of these two homes, then the board has fluctuation between that 10 cent and 0, that they can have a little bit more flexibility, use the cash they have on hand, and then raise the levy back up to whatever the board desires as a level of service. We went over the level of service at our last board meeting. We gave the board a list. So that because we're getting ready to go out to bid, because we're going to obviously very soon have to start taking over maintenance. The district is going to have to start taking over maintenance. But obviously we talked about this a year, but it took a while to do the process, figure out the properties, and go through the process that we have to do to de-annex land.
Just have one more question, and I'll give my comments, and I'll be through. Are there more improvements slated for the Smith Ranch Road, the north-south collector? I mean, is that immediate, or is that out there in the CIP years and years?
Refer to Mr. Upton on a timeline.
And design.
Councilman Camcar, it's actually in property acquisition right now. And once that is completed with TxDOT's blessing, then we'll be ready to have about our last of our reviews with TxDOT, which is a 5-month review, and then go out to bid.
All right. I think this is extraordinarily complex for a variety of different reasons. I think Mr. Patel's absolutely correct. As soon as those improvements happen, which might be 24 or 36 months, parcels 1 is for sure commercial. Parcel 2 and 3, good chance. And we're throwing value away. Now, I understand the regulatory structure creates problematic situations. My professional opinion, as somebody who's in this space but not aligned or working here, is leave it alone, because 36 months from now, you're going to want the $50 million facility or whatever is going to be in parcel 1. But I also understand that there's a residential component to this, but if what we're hearing is true and no resident has ever shown up to this meeting or brought this up, and they're currently in ag, I don't know I'm struggling to see what is necessitating the need to push. My personal opinion would be wait till your improvements and discuss this 6 months after those road improvements are there. And then once you have a gigantic facility, come and ask the PEDC for $5 million in, economic development, you probably feel different about taking them out of a district where, there's going to be more maintenance here. 5 years from now, there's going to be more mowing, more everything. There might be some beautiful pears for all we freaking know. But the $4.5 million in cash is a lot of money. And it's not like they're hurting. So I don't know. I think it's extraordinarily complex. My way is to leave it as is, but I'm one guy.
Member Carbone? Yep. Thank you, Mayor. And just to confirm, the area around 5 is in PMMD 2 and it'll stay there, right?
Yeah, we would solely be taking it out because it's a homestead.
So once Smith Ranch goes through, when and if 1 develops, and then 5 develops, then this is a moot point.
Yeah, once the homesteads go away.
Right. And yeah, it's complex. I think I'd rather keep it. I get the issue. You're having to follow the rollback rates and jump through all those hoops based off of value of 2 homes. So yeah, it causes headaches. I think it solves itself. And do we want to kick out the value now? I'd say suck it up and deal with it for a few more years, and it solves itself, and we keep the value in the district. That's my opinion.
Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not super familiar at all with the process of annexation for a district like this, but if we were to consent and you move forward, as it said, with your hearings, and these are removed from the district, is there a way to put them back in if they were to redevelop something that's not residential?
In order to add properties back into the district, the property owners would either have to petition the district to come back into the district.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and then what was on the July 13th vote? I'm assuming it wasn't unanimous. What was the vote count?
It was 6-1.
6-1. Okay.
5-1.
All right. All other questions I had, I believe, were answered. That's all.
I believe it was 5-1.
I'm sorry, 5-1. Yes, we did have one absent member.
Member Cade, did you have a question? Okay. Yeah.
I want to say that I agree with everybody else so far, but I do want to make one clarification. So if these 2 residential parcels or 5, I guess, if everything goes through, were all removed, and they determined that in the future use they were going to be, or someone purchased them for commercial use, would those businesses be forced into the business district?
No.
So we would lose the whole entire business district would lose the taxes associated with those converted residential properties, right?
I'll leave the financial analysis to Matt as to what is expected in terms of potential loss of tax revenues.
Well, I'm just looking at what we've had this public discussions on so far. We've got a roughly $50 million apartment complex going in there. That's not parceled out. It's in the middle of all of that, right? And we have an old sand pit in 4 that could potentially be used for some residential, but very unlikely, given the commercial use around it. And if a commercial business does decide to purchase one of these residential lots and they have to petition, I guess, to get into them, I mean, why would they do that? So if we just kept the parcels in currently, like Tony said, it fixes itself, right?
You know, I'm not sure I could say it's going to fix itself.
Well, in the future, in 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, the management district would lose money because, you know, if I can look into my crystal ball and see that these pieces of property are, you know, ideal for commercial parcels, and they're no longer in the district, then the district would lose money.
Yeah, and I would say the key will be on, you know, two things I think we could do is 2, 3, and 4 we could rezone to BP 288 and make them, you know, same as the commercial area, which would help to make sure there's no more residential brought in, and we preserve the land for commercial, so that'd be something we could do. And then obviously 1 and 5, if they continue to be homesteads, we're going to be back here in probably 2-3 years for the simple fact is that our revenue is going to continue to decline, and we're not going to be able to maintain the improvements. So then we're going to have to take them out if they continue to be homesteads, because we project our rates probably going to go down to, yeah, so it's going to continue to go down to 5, 6 cents, somewhere around there. And then we're going to have to take it out because it'll take us so many years to get back to where, you know, if we need about $1.2 million and we've got about $1 billion, you know, we're going to need $1.2 billion that would project, you know, out from there. 10 cents is going to be $1.2 million or $1.3 million. We're going to have to get that levy back up at some point.
At which point, when they're commercial, you have free flexibility within all the businesses of that district to change your tax rate to whatever it might be, because you're no longer governed by the truth in taxation rule, right?
Absolutely. But that's making the assumption that 1 and 5 are no longer homesteads here in the next few years. So if we want to wait a few years and see if they don't become homesteads, but we're going to have to come back here, or the district will not have enough revenue. They may have a cash balance of $4.5 million, but if we have $1.2 million in expenses and we're only bringing in $600,000 or $700,000 in revenue, the math's pretty simple to know that very soon we're going to be back here to do this. When do you
anticipate, Matt, the increase in expenses? I know it's kind of going to
it's going to, obviously we're doing the 288 enhancements right now, so come probably August, September, we're going to take over the maintenance from Clear Creek up to the Beltway. And then after, you know, probably end of the year, beginning of next year, we'll take over the McCard intersection because it'll be done. And then, you know, by the end of next year, we'll have the entire corridor will be managed by the management district. So they'll be responsible for all the maintenance.
A year or two, year and a half, 2 years, something like that.
Say 1 year from now, we'll probably be maintaining pretty much the entire corridor.
I'm good with waiting a couple, 3 years for you guys to come back and ask for that. Then you have free control of your entire tax rate, and, you know, the board of directors for the district can make that call at that time. That's just me. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Member Koza?
I mean, as far as these tracks, if they did stay residential and developer came in and wanted to put a neighborhood, we could always remove it at that time.
We could what?
And remove that from the district at that time if it was developed as residential.
Potentially, yeah.
I think the benefits of leaving it as it is there.
So just real quick. So Matt, on the financial side of things, what is the tax rate currently?
$7,988 here. I'll go back up to
7.98 cents.
Okay. And the max is 10 by state law, correct?
The max is 10 by voter election.
By voter election.
Yes.
Okay. But I remember it was all created through the legislature. So I'm sure
Correct.
that's what was presented. And so currently, we're estimating, is that the 713?
713 for next year, but that's based on preliminary values, so the value will probably drop for protest.
Okay. And well, so even if let's looks like in 21 it was 649. So even if it drops, halfway between the two, you're going to be at around 700,000, 680, somewhere in that ballpark. And you've got, and you're not anticipating the full million two in this next budget year. You're anticipating a portion of it.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. I'm just trying to.
But we'll have the 4.5 million to start drawing down also.
Right. Okay. Just trying to look here at where we are. Any forecast? Have you done any forecast for 23?
Yeah, we usually have traditionally been probably a 3 to 5% growth increase in the district, but you can see going across the bottom. Our first year in, it was 44% increase. Then it went to a 4% increase, 18, 8, 7, 2, 4, and then last year was a -3. And then, this year's so far probably going to end up being another double-digit year.
I mean,
we still have
negative 16.
Huh?
In 21, it's showing negative 16.
That was on the. Did I read the wrong line? Oh, so the top line, this line here is the value increase.
Here we go. Okay.
And then we had a 16% reduction in revenue.
Right. Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments?
How do we dispense of this? We don't want to vote on it, do we?
Yeah, we vote on it. We have to either vote to accept, a vote in favor is accepting the resolution to de-annex these properties. A vote no would be keeping it as is. Mr. Coker, am I correct?
That is correct. If you vote no, those properties will remain in the district.
Okay. So with that, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Cade?
No.
Councilmember Berry?
No.
Councilmember Owens?
No.
Councilmember Koza?
No.
Councilmember Carbone?
No.
Councilmember Kamkar?
No.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Nope.
The motion fails.
All right, moving forward in our agenda, matters removed from the consent agenda. We're going to go back to our consent. Member Kamkar, I believe you removed item C real quick. Since we had the discussion under, do we need to put it back on?
I'd just like to ask the Darren my normal 3 questions. Just
Well,
so
let's put it on the table.
Yeah.
Okay, just real quick. So, Member Cade, would you present? I know it's not a voting item, but item C real quick. Or here, I'll do it. We'll get to E. Just input and discussion, surface water treatment plant update. Member Kamkar, you pulled this, so.
Yes. We have not received any requests for scope change.
No, sir, Councilman Kamkar.
The amount is still $175 million.
As budgeted, sir.
Okay. And when are we supposed to be delivering?
As mentioned earlier, anticipated date as of right now in flux is June of 2023.
One last item. The personnel associated with that, are we delaying, keeping the same, or how is that doing? Because we are pushing out some of the time frame, and obviously there are certain personnel tied to this facility.
Well, as will be coming forth with regards to our personnel request, staff has been looking at the schedule and will be requesting certain staff to be at a 12-month, 9-month, and 6-month our way through the year, because we will be start up and testing on that equipment, and operators need to know that equipment and not show up after it's done.
And so, Darren, our current CMAR position is still preserved, where the city is only liable for time.
That is correct, per the contract.
All right, that's all I got. Thank you.
Good deal. Member K, any other questions, comments, council? Seeing none, moving to consent item number E. Member K, would you present that, please?
Yes. Consideration and possible action, resolution number R 2022-144. So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Staff report.
This is a recommendation for renewal with Brightview for landscape services that had been awarded previously. This additional amount recognizes some additional areas, and this is very similar. And for a different area, for item L, the same logic. It just updates the areas that we're responsible for. This is paid from PDC. But because it goes over the $200,000, it comes back to you for ratification of the dollar amount. Nothing to add.
So,
All right, questions,
Mr.
comments?
Pearson, this is actually the one that modifies the existing right-of-way maintenance contract for the additional parks and the new facilities we just
Apologize.
completed. I'm sorry.
So there's a couple of different ones. You're right. I apologize.
There's 3 of them, so it's confusing.
So C is just our regular parks maintenance areas that we're updating. Yeah.
So this is city expense, not
Yes,
EDC.
yes, sir. Yeah, apologize.
Questions, comments, concerns, council?
Very quickly, page 88 of the big agenda item has the pricing for the irrigation tech and the enhancement laborer. Is that number going up, staying the same? It seemed a little high to me, but I don't have visibility on what y'all initially went there.
So I believe this is actually establishing that hourly rate, which wasn't in the original contract.
Are we at a real stopping point? They have one more, from reading the memo, they have one more contract renewal, and then at some point, I guess we're going to go back to rebid.
That's correct.
I don't know. And what are we paying irrigation people right now per hour? You have $82.50 here. Is there like a going rate that we're kind of working on?
Is Eric?
Yeah, no, Eric's, Mr. Hammond's been texting me and let me know is that it's market standard. The irrigation rates and the personnel, that prices that we're getting are in that market standard rate.
Thank you.
Member Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. The other day, I saw Lori out here, but she disappeared. I don't know where she went. But the other day, I made an inquiry specifically about this vendor, and I'm just curious if there was an update on whether that was resolved with the issue.
Don't recall the
Should I be more
inquiry.
specific? I don't want to, maybe, I saw this vendor maybe putting some of the clippings directly into our storm sewers.
So, Councilman Hernandez, that was not our vendor. That was actually associated with the commercial property.
Okay.
And so we have been visiting with that commercial properties vendor.
Oh, fantastic news. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Councilmember Cade?
Aye.
Councilmember Berry?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Koza?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Kamkar?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Member Berry, would you present item I, please?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Consideration and possible action resolution number R2022-165. So moved.
Motion and second. Staff report?
As we mentioned at the budget amendment number 6 that council saw, we got notice that there's a required upgrade for recording software. It's used in public safety and other venues, and so this would provide for that acquisition to upgrade that system. Nothing to add.
That was me.
Member Hernandez, you pulled this.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. This is just from reading through, I had a couple questions. I'm curious. I saw that part of this was going to give us the ability to record like texts to 911, things like that. Is that something that we currently don't have, or is that just the ability to record those?
And if you can help us out.
Currently, we don't have that feature.
So with this upgrade, it's going to allow us to receive texts to 911?
It'll capture the text to 911. So when the 911 center is capable of taking that in, we can also capture that coming in as a part of the recording.
So it's not that.
It's not giving the availability to send a text into 911.
What would that entail if we were to?
Well, that's through Greater Harris County 911, and they manage that entire process as far as upgrading. I know it's on. I know we're on the list. I just can't remember when that actually is.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because I think that would be an incredible feature. And I mean, I saw that and I got really kind of excited about that, to be, able to put that into the public and say, hey, this is a cool new feature. If you're trapped in a corner and all you can, don't want to get on the phone.
Yeah, it comes as a standard part of the package, so we get the option to be able to record that, but until Greater Harris County actually delivers the software and the system to be able to text into 911, that's when it would take effect.
I see. Okay. Well, if we could maybe make an inquiry on that, I'd love a follow-up on that capacity to add that. I think that'd be pretty cool, but that's all I had, Mayor. I was just curious about that.
No problem. Mm-hmm. Uh, Any other questions, comments on I? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Barry,
Aye.
Councilmember Owens,
Aye.
Councilmember Koza,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone,
Aye.
Councilmember Kamkar,
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Cade.
Aye.
The motion passes.
And Member Owens, would you present item L, please?
Item L,
L, yep.
consideration possible action resolution number R 2022-170. I so moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Staff report.
So this is the third of the landscape maintenance contracts, and this is the one that involves PDC and increases the amounts, which went over the 200 amount threshold.
Questions, comments?
I didn't pull it from the agenda, but I'll yield to the person that did.
I just real quick. So this is the same group, but one is out of the PDC bucket and one's out of the city bucket.
It's a different company.
Is this not the Brightside guys? This is a
This is landscape art.
okay. And then do they have a similar contract structure where they're getting, because they were on the same bid tab. That's the only reason that was confusing me, was that Brightside and all these were on that same bid tab.
I believe Brightview did bid that, but this is just the renewal, so this wasn't bid this year. It's renewing an existing contract.
Okay. And then is this going to be in perpetuity on the PDC dime? All right. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a question, just a random question that popped into my mind. I was curious at the percentage of space, managed by the PDC as compared to the city. Because, when you add up all the EDC maintenance costs, it's a large percentage of the annual maintenance costs of the entire city. Of 1.3 million, we just voted on that. So, and we are only bidding on Dixie Farm, Cullen, Broadway East, Yost, State Highway 35, and it looks like is it Pearland Parkway also, right?
So remember, Barry, the $1.3 million contract's from the general fund. It's not through the EDC.
I understand.
And that's only one of our mowing contracts that the city manages. We
There's a
also
rough cut and
we've
some other
got rough
pieces.
cut for we've got FEMA lot mowing, and we've got rough cut for ditches and detention ponds in a separate contract.
Okay, and I think, but this particular contract is similar to what EDC does, right? Because they're maintaining entryways and beautification, that kind of stuff.
This is
Yeah,
EDC.
that's what I'm talking about.
So
But
this one
as-
is EDC.
As compared, the feature function of this project as compared to the previous project we just voted on for the city, I think the feature function is very similar in nature, right? I mean, it's just irrigation, mowing, dealing with pumps.
So the EDC contract, and I'll let Matt speak more specifics if you need it. It's for the monuments and the areas that the PDC built, and those typically have a lot more plantings and a lot more features that have to be maintained than us just typically are mowing for rights of ways.
Gotcha. Okay.
Matt,
Yeah, and I was going to say one of the reasons, obviously, the EDC maintains these, so we could maintain our commercial areas, our major corridors where we have the largest share of our investment jobs and those things at a higher quality maybe than we would just a street that we're just mowing. So, we do have a higher level of service here, but I don't think it's exceedingly, we're mowing at the same amount. It would be the trees and the plantings and the other things that Trent mentioned.
Yeah, I guess a follow-up to that is that we have 11 entryways minus the State Highway 288, right? So 10 total that we maintain?
I don't know the number right off the top of my head. Valerie, how many?
It was 11 back in 2007
7 right now.
right now. Is that all we have?
Correct.
We haven't finished all the other ones that were outlined, I guess.
We still have
outside
about
of the city.
3 or 4 more probably to do.
I got you. Okay.
Close.
Any other questions, comments?
I have one. Why on this, I'm looking at the cost, and Highway 35 is much higher than the other ones. Is there a specific reason for that?
Doing more of it.
By far the largest area.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, the thing,
we're doing.
Cullen looks similar or comparable in length at least.
Yeah, Colon, we wouldn't have to mow as much of the side because most of it's developed, especially with the cemeteries, the school. So we don't do as much behind the back of the curb. And obviously the median in Colon is very, very small compared to 35.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments? Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Councilmember Owens.
Aye.
Councilmember Koza.
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone.
Aye.
Councilmember Kamkar.
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Cade.
Aye.
Councilmember Berry.
All right.
The motion passes.
All right, moving forward in our agenda, item X, other business, there is none. 11, mayor council issues for city council discussion, there are none. Next up, executive session under Texas Government Code, section 551.072, real property. Council will be moving into executive session at 9:18.
You mean we're through?
We have executive session.
Do we? No shit. What are we gonna do? Who are we getting rid of? Mayor? Some of the council.
Just popped up on the agenda. Hey, you saw what I was asking though, right?
Executive session.
You understand what I was questioning? I'm over that. No, the mowing.
All right, City Council is returning from executive session at 10:38. And with that, we will move forward in our agenda to adjournment, and we will adjourn at 10:38.